Welcome to the Alain Elkann interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
Charles Zana, you are both an architect of interiors and a designer or furnishing and objects. Could you tell me more or less what is the difference in these two jobs?
I studied architecture at Les Beaux-Arts Paris, long time ago now, and I finished my school in the 80s. So basically, I was an architect, and then I went to New York to work for 1 year. There, I work in interior design, and I discover a new job. I change my way to think or to design space. That means that I am working now from the inside to the outside. So I'm doing both. I'm still doing architecture, but mainly when I have interior design to do in my job. So I don't see really any differences. For me, it's the same job. It's just the question of the size of the project. So I am working for the volume, for the light, for the colors, and also for the integration of my project in a landscape or in a city. So it's quite the same job today. I think that I'm doing the same job.
But you are also designing furniture. Reading about you, I had the feeling that in your work, you were greatly inspired, or at least very respectful of two Italian architects, Molino and Sottsass.
Yes. On terms of design, we were always designing furniture for our project, bespoke furniture. And since now 3 years, we start to show them independently. I am a mixed in what inspired me. It's the mixed between the classic French 18th century. Also, all the design from the 30s inspire me a lot. And I like also the freedom and the happiness that is on the Italian design. So Carlo Molino, that were also an architect like me, I like his way to recreate furniture inspiring by the woman body and all this very ergonomic furniture. Of course, my star is Ettore Sottsass, which is for me an artist. First is an artist and then an architect and maybe a designer. But for sure, Sottsass wanted to be an artist, wanted to be a painter, and his father was an architect. So at the end, he finally went to architecture. But he wanted to be a painter. So all his life, he was thinking to create furniture, but with an artistic way, always pushing the frontier between art and design very far. And he was the first with this inspiration and with this theory. Now we have a lot of designers who think that they are first artist and then designer, but Sottsass was really the first one.
But you talked about Molino's father. Yourself, you were born in Tunisia, but you then came to Paris very early and you consider and love Paris very much. But your father had quite an influence on you, if I'm not wrong, because he was himself a collector of antique and beautiful objects. And he used to take you to auctions at Drouot in Paris, or you started to go to the name is Sapeta Flea Market, which is a part of the famous Les Puces, this very large market of furniture, paintings. So since very young, you were educated in that way. Your parents were artistic and very open and so on and so forth.
My father in Tunisia was an engineer, and he didn't have an artistic background or culture because it was not from a family that were interested by that. But my father really get an eyes. He was someone who can, even without the history of an artist, recognize a good painting from another one. So when I was young, in the 70s, my father was what we call in France a very addict of les années Pompidou. That was a kind of modernist that wanted to change life with an utopia. And this utopia was in our house. So all the house was in orange and in the green. We had the very funky furniture. And he was buying all the stuff in stainless steel, all the furniture in stainless steel, all the furniture in plastic. So I was really very inspired by him. All the time we were going to museum. We were very interested by all the painting from the 50s, all the French school. That was my day-to-day inspiration. When I was 18, as I was very interested by art, but good in mathematics, then my parents, they said, maybe there is something that you can do, which is in the middle of art and the technique, and it's architecture. So I didn't have any idea of architecture, but I followed them by this love of art and by this love of all the things that I have seen when I was young.
In your career, you have made everything. I mean, you have made villas, apartments, hotels, restaurants in various parts of the world, right? Is there a common denominator in your work? Is there a specific Charles Zana iconic type of work, or you change according to what you're doing?
Yes, I think that there are some important points for me, which you can always recognize in my project. The first one that I learned at school, that I learned at Les Beaux-Arts, it's to be contextual. That means that I always, in the beginning of a project, think, where is the project? I don't do the same house in Marrakesh, in New York, or in Switzerland. I always try to reconsider where is the project. So this is the first point, I think, which is important for me. And then also, it's to bring culture in the project, to try to find narrative way to write or to talk about the project in the beginning. Now I'm always working to find one or two important words that I can have for all the project. This is very important for me. So I think that this is something that you can recognize. I had a client many years ago that said that he can recognize a house that I have done, even if all the projects are very different, one from another. But there is a link, there is a kind of narrative that you can recognize. So this is, I think, very important for me. Also, the second point is that I like to start always from a classic circulation, from a classic design, and then to treat it in a modern way, to have a modern twist. So I always say that I'm very classic with a modern twist.
Now, let's talk about one project that combines two things in your life, three things maybe: friendship, interest in food, and architectural job. You helped, or you became a partner with the famous chef who is also a friend of yours, Yann Nouri,
Yes,
to create in New York, in the neighborhood of Soho, you created a restaurant called La Résidence.
Yeah.
You know, what is La Résidence? It's one of the newest projects, right? It's a new restaurant. I don't know if you are involved in the restaurant, but you did it anyway.
I met Yann Nouri 5 years ago, and he's a French chef, very fashionable now in New York and specialized in catering, in big opening and reception. And he wanted to create his own space, like a very confidential, very private space in New York. And so I went there 2 years ago, and I discovered a space which is on the 12th floor of an industrial building in Soho. And this is very typically the way that we think here at the studio with all the team, is that we change completely the idea that he have, because at the beginning he wanted to have first a reception room, and then at the end of the flat, the professional kitchen. And we changed by install the kitchen in the first room. So you enter through the professional kitchen, and then you walk, and at the end of the flat, you have let's say the reception part. So this is something that we always try to do. It's not to design or to answer to the question that the client asks us, but to think very differently. So that the first point was to install the professional kitchen and all the cooker, all the assistant, like if they were the important pieces of the project. Then the project was, we break everything in the flat. I think it's 400 square meters. So we break everything to keep it as a loft, as a very industrial space. And for me, it was a kind of tribute to my young years, because when I was young, all this fantastic loft in Soho, that was like a dream for me. So here I play with all the maximum things that I could keep. So we keep the parquet floor, we restore it, we keep the old windows. They were very traditional American window that we kept. We break all the false ceiling to show the structure of the building and to have all the pipes and we discover a light well also in the ceiling that we kept. So that was really a very interesting project. And for me to always to work in New York, it's a very sensitive and I really love it. So the kitchen is professional. It's in stainless steel with a very, very hard stone, a black stone. So it's black stone and the stone is like a granite. This is the kitchen where you have all the people preparing the food. And then for the reception part, we bought a lot of furniture for them. That is a mix of Charlotte Perriand, Prouvé, and we designed also a couch for the space.
In Saint-Tropez, you built an hotel, Hotel Loup Pinet. How did you build the hotel in Saint-Tropez? It must be very different from New York, right? Something completely different.
In Saint-Tropez, when I started the project with Maison Pariante, I wanted to work around that. It's now almost 8 years ago. And the inspiration was all the Riviera spirit, all the 60s Riviera spirit with, of course, Brigitte Bardot, but also with Picasso, with all the MAC Foundation and all this inspiration, mixing terracotta, mixing rough space. So that was the idea to recreate like kind of village, with different house around the swimming pool. And with this, you were talking about friendship, but with this very friendly inspiration, not a new hotel, but an hotel that you have the idea to already have seen it.
And the Kimpton Hotel in Boulevard des Capucines in Paris, your beloved city, what kind of hotel it is?
Yeah, the Kimpton was typically a French Art Deco building. That was the beginning. It was La Saint-Maritaine de Luxe. So it's an iconic building in Paris with white marble and with a lot of metallic balcony and with a huge staircase. So in the Kimpton is an American brand and they wanted the client to feel Paris. At the beginning, I was thinking that not to make a kitsch Parisian hotel, but to rediscover or to redesign Paris inspiration. So Kimpton is definitely a Parisian hotel with all the molding and with all the gray colors on the walls. And it's more like if you have a pied-à-terre in Paris than to be in the standard hotel room.
So to continue your trip, Paris obviously is your city. You're very inspired by the French taste and taste art. But another city is Venice. I mean, one of your beloved places in the world. And there you also built an apartment, for instance, in Venice.
When I was a student, I went many times in Venice because I had a friend who had a Venetian family. So I discovered Venice when I was quite young. And in those years, I went to Venice mostly in winter when you have this fantastic fog. It was less crowded than today, 40 years ago, but there were still people. Venice, it's obviously a fantasy. It's a city where I love the story of the city, the amazing life of the people in Venice, and this Palazzo, all the culture. It's one of the most cultural city in Italy. And so I have a very strong link and I know very well Venice and I love to walk and to go from a very open place, from very little tiny street and to go from Dorso Duro to Giudaica. I really love Venice. And I also know very well all the island around. It's really a world different than everywhere else. So I have made many projects in Venice. One was like a kid's dream. 8 years ago now, I have done an exhibition in the store called the Negozio Olivetti, designed by Scarpa. And I have done an exhibition that I called the Dialogo between Scarpa and Sottsass, and the link between the Scarpa architecture and Sottsass ceramic. So I know quite well Venice, and one of my clients asked me to do a project. I was very excited. It was, we designed an entire floor in the Palazzo Morozini, which is Campo San Stefano. That was a long process, long project process, starting from all the authorization. So I had an operation architect with me, an Italian, but I had to go to see the superintendente and to understand how those administration, they want to keep everything, they want to check everything. Each hole that you do in the wall, you have to take a picture and show them, because between the painting layer, sometimes they can discover that there is a story behind what you see today. This is how we done the Palazzo Morozini. It was a 2 years project. Very, 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 I loved that project. Love that project.
But now we spoke about New York, Paris, Saint-Tropez, Venice. But in your biography, in your story, they say that the most impressive thing for you was the landscape in the border of Egypt and Libya when you went to this Siwa oasis. Why? I mean, this is a completely different thing. It's the desert.
First, this is my personal life, because my wife, she always wanted to go to Siwa, which is very complicated to reach. It's 10 hours by a jeep car. And I always said that I didn't really wanted to go to make 10, 11 hours going and coming back. And one day, I don't know, I was lucky. I was talking with someone I didn't knew. The guy was talking about Siwa, and I said, yes, it's a dream for us, but it's too complicated to reach. And then he said, in a week, I have a plane going to Siwa. So first, this is something that happened very quickly, and we went there. There is only one hotel in Siwa, which is without electricity and built with the sand, built with the ground of Siwa. And you live with in a condition really very simple, without electricity, without telephone. You don't have really a telephone network. And that was, for me, we spent 5 days, because the plane was coming a Saturday and going back a Thursday. So we stayed 5 days there, and it was really fantastic. No sound, no connection, or very, very small connection. It was very, very quiet. No really architecture. There was really quite nothing except the desert and this very salty lake. That was really a very, very beautiful trip and a very beautiful experience.
You wrote somewhere that you were extremely impressed and spent a lot of time looking at the paintings of Mark Rothko in the Vuitton Museum in Paris. I mean, the Frank Gehry Museum, when there was this retrospective show that was in New York and then in Paris. Why Rothko? I mean, I say this because you talked about the desert before, right? That you were very impressed by the desert.
Of course, it's the same. Rothko used to say that he loved the people to walk in front of his painting, to enter in another work. So I think that you have the same spirit of emptiness. And first, it's abstractive painting, and it's really a word, Rothko, it's really a word where you can enter. Also, Rothko was really, really someone very sad. Everybody now think of Rothko with the colored painting, but when you read about Rothko, he was all his life someone very, very sad. There's really a sadness. There is really, I don't know the word in English, a profondeur.
Deepness.
There are really a deepness behind or beyond this image that you see of happiness. And in the exhibition that we are lucky to have in France and in Paris this year, there was all the last painting from Rothko, and it's very impressive to see how he came from color to black at the end, and that was the last series that he have done before he died. So for this. And to see all those Rothko painting together was a fantastic experience and it was like a trip. And I was also lucky to see it even without anybody, just with friends from New York. And we had the same impression to walk and to enter the painting, to enter in another world, like when, really to enter. And you're right that in Siwa, it's quite the same because the image that you see in Siwa is very like in the Sugimoto photos of the sea. In Sugimoto, you see the sea and the sky are becoming the same. And it's something that I really love. Maybe because I live in a very complicated world with a lot of noise outside and with a very lot of activity. So that kind of art or that kind of space helped me to go down.
What has changed in the tastes of people since you started? Some things stay for a long time, right? Even restaurants, hotel, right? But nowadays, they change quite often, right? Because clients change, people change, way of life changes. How do you perceive this and how do you work?
What have changed for me during those 30 years or 40 years? It's the houses, but it's the same for hotel and restaurant. Now, I think that before the interior designer were thinking to make beautiful space and with an idea of beauty, with an idea of harmony, to mix color in a nice way, that everything was pretty. Today, as I was saying previously, I think that you have to be more narrative. You have to have an idea behind the interior design, or do you have to think about the history of a space, or to say, okay, I'm doing an interior in the spirit of the 30s or in the spirit of this and this. So I think that people don't accept today a simple, beautiful project. They want to understand what is behind. So this is, for me, the big change. Change came also by all the image that you can have today very quickly. All the people, they have 1,000 photos of project all around the world, 1,000 of Instagram picture, and people have a lot of image in the head, and it's very complicated to try to explain them to do something new, because if they cannot see it or if they don't have any reference, they don't go for a new project.
Before, not so long past, a kind of clients in America as well as in Europe, they like, for instance, Louis XV, Louis XVI furniture, that kind of carpeting, impressionist paintings, or old masters, and this is completely changed.
Yeah, but it's coming back also from time to time. In the new project that I can see, in the new hotel that I can see, you always have some people coming back to the old time. You go and you come back. But now when I'm looking to many projects of hotel or many projects of restaurant or some house, you have a lot of people who are doing, who are redoing things like in the Louis XVI or in the countryside. The difference is really the image. I think that when you were an architect 50 years ago, you were doing 3 projects, 3 drawings, and then the client can decide with your 3 drawings. Today, you have to reconsider everything and to do many images and many photos and many reference. And I think that doesn't help creativity, because I think that the real creativity, sometimes you have it in your head and you have an idea. When you have to be too demonstrative, when you have to show too many things, you control everything, and then the projects are less creative, could be less crazy than they were.
Tell me something. There is something strange. I mean, in the past, as we said, you had, let's say, the example of the Louis XVI, 15 furniture, or the Empire, the Napoleon time furniture. There's a lot of gold, there is a lot of bronze and leather, and therefore it's a luxurious way of life. And even in apartments, they were inspired by mansions, castles, royal places. Nowadays, what is interesting is that an architect like Jean Prouvé, who became very fashionable, very important, and collectors and wealthy people like to have furniture or even the movable houses of Jean Prouvé. But these houses and this furniture were made for schools, for poor people, for simple people, even in Africa or in. So isn't this a paradox?
Yeah.
And now is luxury to have something which was made for a large public, for practical utility, for a completely different idea, right?
Right, right. No, Jean Prouvé was a very famous engineer working with the steel and invent a lot of things. I'm still a little surprised because, of course, I love Jean Prouvé and I think that it's a fantastic engineer, but he was never thinking of himself like a designer. When he wanted to do design, he was working with Charlotte Perriand or with Jeanne Rey, but for himself, he was just an engineer. Then I think this is something that I think that it's become fashionable because there was a lot of image, and also it came with because I saw really this movement of Jean Prouvé. I had many pieces from Jean Prouvé when I was 20 years old, and you bought them for nothing in the flea market because you're right, those were school chairs. So, but I think that it go very well with the modern art. It has something to see with the market of the modern art is that at a certain time, they start to install Prouvé furniture in front of the modernist painting. And there was a dialogue between those two pieces of something very rough, very industrial, and a very minimalist painting. And I think you're right. The people are buying a Prouvé to have a statement in their house, to have really a Prouvé. I don't think that they like the idea of Jean Prouvé, who were a very democratic idea to manufacture furniture for everybody. You have the same today with Lalanne, is that when I was young, Lalanne was an animalist sculptor. And, it was sold by Art Curial, and it was not people from the art establishment didn't really consider Lalanne like an art, more like a decorative. And so you had a lot of families who have a monkey or a fish, but it was something very decorative. Now, when I was in Basel this year in the design fair, you had an entire booth about Lalanne, people that are crazy and that cost millions. Because I think that maybe they work very well the market and they were very good in marketing. I think that the more you see...
Tell me something. Now, because of this, it has always happened that a new king, a new emperor, a new time, a new war, a new thing changed the taste of people, right? And in France, you have seen that a lot, right?
Yeah.
You have seen the Louis XVI, Louis XV, the Empire, Retour d'Égypte, and then you have seen a lot of different tastes in the 20th century. You have seen Janssen, you have seen Franck, Madeleine Castin, and all sorts of people who went by. Is it difficult to be à la page in each décennie? I mean, or you just are for that time and then the fashion changes and you're not fashionable anymore?
I can talk about myself. I don't think that it's too difficult because first, I have a very slow career. Is that I think that I climb every step one by one. So, and I'm becoming mature now. So I don't think that I was a very, very young fashionable architect. I think that I become a very good architect and then I became fashionable. I think that it's not good in our work to become fashionable too fast. I prefer, or I love more the career like people like Mangiardino or Jacques Grange, that each decenny, they are the more and more talented and they establish the more and more their style than someone who is very, very fashionable at 30s and then doesn't do anything after. So I think it's not so complicated. It's the matter to work honestly and to always be passionate by your work and to always love the next project, not to sleep too much on the old project, but to always love the next project.
Look forward, yes. And the clients, people who commission, have changed a lot over the years.
Yes, people who commission have changed a lot because I think that when I start, some client. They were thinking to build a house. It's a most important project in our life, and they were doing that once, let's say, once for a project. Today, the client, they don't think like that, and they go very fast. And so in 20 years, you can have 3-4 projects with the same client. So it's very different. Clients have less the idea that they build family house for generation and generation. They are more building something for today. The project is not in a long time. It's most in a short time. They can even sold an house, buy another one, you know.
Even if you keep your magic wood box of color paintings on your desk, which was given to you by your father as an icon of the past, I think, what a client also wants from an architect, a designer, is to be well organized and to deliver quickly the project.
First, I think my client, they want to be surprised. They want to be comfortable. I think what I recommend to when people are talking about the relation between a client and an architect, it's to be comfortable. I think you have to trust your architect and to be comfortable. And this is the best, really the most important point. And then, especially when you do houses, it's very important to come very close to your client, because what I always say is that at the end, we are making projects for people, for family, for collection, for, so we have to deserve that. You have to be very close from a family, and you have to first is to understand really what is the request, to understand the space, because you have to have some humility also to understand where you are, what is the connection between the room, the fluidity, and how the people, they're going to live. It's very important to think about all this point. But you're right, the relation is very important. I think that a good project is a good client and a good architect.
Nowadays, there are many more young people who have a lot of money, right? I mean, in the world, there are many more young people, not only in Europe, in America, but in Asia, everywhere, who became wealthy very young. All these people of the startups and things like that, they probably have a very different taste.
Yes. But I don't really have this problem, because when people arrive and come to see me, is that more or less they want my taste. So of course I work around, for example, when the people, they have a collection, art collection, different, or a design collection, I work when you have a people with a lot of, when with the house, once again, with the country, with the city where we build. But I don't really have people who come to me and who want really something very different than what we do.
You work alone, or you have many people with you?
No, I don't work alone. Hopefully, I don't work alone. I have a team. We are around 30s, mixed with architect and interior designer. So we are a team of 30s.
And do you have an iconic piece of furniture of yours?
Yes, fauteuil franc, the Frank sofa, Frank armchair, because it's one of the first that we designed here with the team. I designed it very, very quickly. And the idea was to make a very small sofa, but very comfortable on the same time, like a small French sofa. And when people are talking with me about my furniture, everybody say, I'm talking about this Frank. So I don't know. It's a very kindly thing for me, and I love it very much.
What is your next project?
We deliver now, let's say in the coming days, a fantastic mansion house in Paris, Place du Palais Bourbon. So this is for the coming days. We hope to finish around July 15. And I have new project that I have a house now in Miami. We are designing a house in Miami, in Star Island. And this is a very exciting project. We will finish in 6 or 8 months. That will be my focus plan for September to May next year.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Alain Elkann interviews.